Hello, I'm Reggie Young. I'm here with Markus Seebauer. Markus, if you could take a quick second to explain a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you're up to.
Um, I have been running a translation company, gatewaytranslations.net, for over a decade. I started that company by myself, bootstrapped, still running it by myself with a team. And we help companies with international expansion. So that also includes helping entrepreneurs to get into international markets.
Hmm. It's interesting. It makes me think like what kind of client would come to you and what kind of service do you provide specifically? Because at least for what I do on Amazon, when we think about translations, it's translating, a product page from,
Mhm.
from English to German or English to French. Is that kind of the service that you provide, or you do other things?
Yes, we also do other things. We focus on translation of product pages, websites, software localization, e-learning localization, like online courses. So when we talk about Amazon pages, you don't just need a straight translation, a word for word translation, but you have to convey the meaning, and the tone of voice might be slightly different in other markets. And when I think about Germany, where I'm from, we have
Mhm.
a formal and an informal form of address. So that makes things sound very different. And when you're not aware of that, you can run into big issues. And then um, you lose out on a lot of sales.
Oh yeah, I would imagine. I haven't myself personally expanded to any other country outside of Canada,
Mhm.
but I have helped some international clients and just researching things. Usually, when I try and do their research and I don't know the other language, I realize very quickly that it's a lot harder than people make it out to be. You can't just throw things in Google Translate and expect to be
Right.
successful in the marketplace, right? Um, so what made you decide to kind of get into this business? Like, why did you choose, you know, translation service over any other type
Mhm.
of business that you decided to start up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I studied computer science at the Technical University of Munich. It's one of the best universities in the world to study computer science. I graduated, so it could have been easy just to work in a big company or even be self-employed as a software developer. Have to say, it's a more academic degree, so I had very broad knowledge. I was not too focused on programming. And I did an internship in India 15 years ago in a software company. And then this was an international project with Germany, and they asked for my help. They asked, "Can you help us with translations?" They said, "Now it's not enough time that you could work properly developing software." And I said, "Okay, yeah, why not?" Yeah. So that's how I get into it in the first place.
Okay, excellent. And how do you how do you go about getting clients? Like, what's like your
Mhm.
primary strategy for getting? I mean, you've been in the business for 10 years. I haven't met many
Mhm.
entrepreneurs who run an online service or remote service and have been in business for 10 plus years. So
Mhm.
probably have like a pretty good stability, or yeah. How are you getting about getting clients and keeping them?
Mhm. Yes, stability is important in business, and some entrepreneurs are so focused on revenue and growth, and especially with B2B, business to business services, like we just focus on companies, not individuals for the translations. It can be really profitable. The customer lifetime value can be huge. With some clients, we've been working for them for 8 years, for 6 years, and the work keeps coming as long as we have been doing a great job, and there's not suddenly a huge budget cut or something like COVID where things get interrupted. And we have developed a lot of different sales channels. So these days, I think LinkedIn is a great way to connect with people, especially if it's a meaningful connection, and you're not just spamming people with immediate and random pitches like, yeah. what is happening too much these days. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that makes me think about like going after different levels of clients, right? So my personal business, um,
Mhm,
I operate my own Amazon businesses, my own e-commerce businesses with my team to the side. But I also have another function, which is kind of my personal brand, and I help other entrepreneurs. So that's kind of like small ticket,
mhm,
lower price client, and then you have like the high ticket, high client, the ones that pay a lot more money, like kind of
mhm,
big ticket clients. And it's interesting, like, being in the business for 10 plus years, it's the high ticket clients that provide that stability to make it beyond a few years. I feel like a lot of people who maybe probably focus on low ticket clients, they end up, at least when I see in the space, they end up kind of pivoting to something else later down the road.
mhm,
I think that maybe has to do with a pattern of, you can only sell $100 service so many times before you reach kind of saturation, or like
mhm,
you kind of like reach a limit, or maybe like a little bit of a ceiling. I'm not saying that won't work for everyone, but I do think it seems to be like a general pattern, like landing one
mhm,
really big client with a big budget, with corporate money. I feel like that has a longer lifeline than
mhm,
constantly trying to get and stay on top of like what's trending for a small or a smaller business. And
mhm.
that also makes me think about LinkedIn and like lead generation on LinkedIn. And I'm curious to, you're saying LinkedIn being one of like a really great sales channel for getting leads. Are you doing anything unique on LinkedIn that you feel like has helped you get more clients?
Mm, we are quite specialized. We focus on e-learning, edtech, education, so that way clients immediately understand. We can help them scale a global training program. We can help them launch their online courses in other countries, and other companies go into the market with a very broad approach. And then we also have the experience to back that up, and has we've worked with huge companies translating their content into 6, 10, 20 languages.
Wow. Jeez. So how are you go about okay. So before I go into how are you getting your workforce for translation,
Yeah.
I'm curious as to the LinkedIn strategy. So I know that LinkedIn, podcasts, TikTok are, they say,
Mhm,
are some of the most underpriced channels for capturing attention right now. So
mhm,
I'm trying to promote a lot with the podcast. I record this Zoom interview. We cut it up for
mhm,
a podcast. We also cut it up for a, a s- like a 10-minute section, maybe a little bit
mhm,
less for LinkedIn. Um, and that's kind of like my primary strategy for LinkedIn, is just try to create some value on LinkedIn, connect with other people in the space, and then whatever happens, happens. And I realize some other people go the whole other route. I feel
mhm,
like some people make like really nice text posts, like story type of posts, and then other people are using LinkedIn with
mhm,
automation. So it's kind of like spamming people's inboxes. And I had bought a software like a year or two ago on because I kept getting hit with DMs from other people, and I
mhm,
realized that I kept opening my DMs from LinkedIn more than I would like my email spam or
mhm,
my social media spam, and I felt like it was, oh, because it's business related, I want to take a look, and I felt
mhm.
like that was gonna go away sooner rather than later, or my account would be kind of shadow banned because of it. And
Yeah.
I've heard that's starting to happen in LinkedIn now, and I'm surprised that it's taken this long for it to kind of impact people's profiles, but I feel like it's still not truly happening at scale.
Mhm.
So I was curious, do you use any type of automation for reaching out to clients, or are you just kind of posting organically and getting clients that way?
I mean, posting and reaching out to people are two different things. With posting, I'm a bit inconsistent. I think it's important to do that regularly. And when you combine outreach with posting relevant content and commenting on people, that's the gold approach. Yeah. Yes. And for outreach, of course, these generic messages, they ruin your reputation. They get you maybe banned. Also for in-mails, for the paid messages, your quality score goes down. You do it more with the normal connection requests. And problem is not that people use automation, but automation makes people lazy. And LinkedIn put a very strong limit on it. Now the amount of connection requests you can send per week is much lower than before. In that way, LinkedIn took massive action. But even just this week, I noticed a new inbox in LinkedIn. Yeah, maybe the reason is that there is just too much noise.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes me think about when I use LinkedIn, literally the amount of spam I get is pretty ridiculous. But for some reason, I keep looking at every single message
Yeah.
because it's related to business or it came from a new client or a new opportunity, then I am more than happy to explore it. And to be honest, when it comes to the B2B space, I feel like my connections, like my actual connections, should be a lot lower if I wasn't leveraging LinkedIn. It's a lot harder to network in the B2B space if I'm not using LinkedIn. Like I can't do that kind of networking on Instagram or TikTok or through email. It's just not as easy, especially like putting your certifications on the back end, on the front end. Like it's just it really is like that really powerful social network. So if someone's not leveraging LinkedIn, regardless of if you're an employee or a business owner, like you need to be on LinkedIn and you need to be posting and engaging with people. And it's I feel like it's a space where people are generally okay with cold outreach. They're okay with like you hitting connect and then typing a quick message. So that's kind of what I've done. And it's very interesting because you normally see like mutual friends lists. So after you've connected with a few people, a lot of people are really happy to hop on a 15-minute call, either to sell your service or to hear how they can work together. And once you do that enough times, you kind of can say, oh, I know so and so from this connection, or I met so and so this way, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of I feel like get clients. And on top of that, those people that they're just connected with and never really engaged with, they end up liking your posts slowly over time. So I think that definitely helps as well. So we'll definitely leverage LinkedIn if anyone's not doing that. And it's where you're going to find your high ticket clients. When I went to a summit recently, and I noticed a lot of the sponsors who paid $10,000 to be at these booths. I was curious I would ask them here and there, like, hey, how are you doing your lead generation? Because your software sign up tool is like $10,000 and it looks like you're doing well. And he's like, yeah, like I don't even really focus on posting stuff on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, whatever. It's all LinkedIn because that's where my client is. So I really like that you're leveraging LinkedIn, and reinforces to me that I need to be on LinkedIn to make sure that I grab those high ticket clients. I'm actually going to be meeting with someone who is pretty well networked with a lot of Amazon aggregators, which are kind of my high ticket clients. I'm meeting with him soon after this, and that came from a mutual connection from a mastermind that I'm a part of, someone that we both know. But that person is on LinkedIn, and that person is pretty well connected on LinkedIn. I can already see their profile.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. And they took a look at my profile, and I've been trying to make my profile slowly better and better over time, like somewhat of a better cover photo, better bio, like good hashtags, just basic profile optimization. And it's definitely been helping out and providing like a lot of social proof in what I've been doing to kind of land those big ticket clients. I'm very thankful for that. And now what I want to do is kind of pivot towards how are you finding talent? Right, you've been in business for over 10 years, right? You're software developer, more of like the coding aspect, but how do you go about hiring people to actually do these translations and then and kind of keep them on board and make sure that the end customer is happy with your service?
Yeah, so there are two questions. The first one, how do we hire people? And then how do we manage quality? We hire people who are professional translators. Translation, for better or worse, is not a regulated profession like becoming a CPA. So anyone can say they are a translator. Either people have background in translation and languages interpretation, or they are subject matter expert. When it becomes very technical, or let's say even like an online course, it's about something medical or something technical, then a subject matter expert can be a better fit. And that's how we distinguish ourselves from many other translation companies, which just have the one size fits all approach, where they have just people with diplomas in translation. And by carefully selecting people, testing them, vetting them by our existing team, and matching people with the work in their field, we can already establish a very good standard of quality. And then as a second step, we have another person, a very experienced person and a native speaker of the right locale, check the work.
Yeah, that's smart. So you're not just like typing in like, Russian translator in Fiverr and picking the first person and then throwing the job at them. I would imagine being in business for this long, you have like more of a more rigid process. It,
Yes,
it,
so I'm not saying on these platforms you cannot find good translators at all.
Mm.
However, in many cases, professionals, they would look for work somewhere else, also to be paid according to their skills and their knowledge and experience. And then what do the reviews they mean? They mean that someone delivered on time, someone was a good communicator. And then in most cases, the client cannot check quality because they don't speak the language.
yeah, yeah, interesting. And that makes me think about now you have this process of finding translators, and it makes me think about
Mhm.
like kind of this idea of drop servicing. So have you ever gotten like a corporate client and it's like, hey, do you do this language? And then
Mhm.
you end up like you don't. So then you either like get funding or you get the contract or you
Mhm.
get the job and then you go and you find the translator. Is that anything that have you ever done that before in your business?
Yes, of course. So we translated a software application for a corporate client in the US to 35 languages. And one language was Kannada. It's
Okay.
like almost like Canada, but with a K and double N. And then the project manager asked me, like, is that Canada? Do they mean Canada? And sometimes people don't know better. Yeah.
Mm.
Especially when people don't speak other languages and not exposed to all these cultures. And because I used to work in India 15 years ago, I knew Kannada is a South Indian language. And then if we have to find someone, so in our network for like another translation company, then I would ask um, for referrals for some rare languages. We would carefully vet the CVs. Then we can test people by having a more experienced translator vet their work. Of course, it's challenging. So we are very careful when something in an obscure language comes and it's like a high profile or it's very urgent, then we would rather decline it than take the risk that this could go wrong.
Yeah, yeah. That makes me think about next is when you're doing these types of translations and you're
Mhm.
finding all these different types of virtual, maybe like freelancers, are they on like a salary or are you normally paying per job?
Usually, we keep people on a per job basis
Mhm.
because we work in 45 languages. And
Jeez.
if we localize an e-commerce website or an online course about software training, then we have very different people. And if it's like French Canadian or French for France, we also have different people because it's a different locale.
Mhm.
So we have to balance that. And if we hire people full time, that would be quite challenging.
Yeah, I mean,
However, yeah, sorry
oh, yeah.
for German, where we have a lot of work, then we have this competitive advantage that there are people who only work with us, and that makes scheduling projects much easier.
Mm. Yeah. I would bet it provides a lot of rigidity, right? If you're translating in so many languages, is that drop servicing type of business model, which makes sense, right? If you've been in
Mhm.
business for so long, you only your expenses only happen when you get, or your major expenses, the freelancers or
Mhm.
the translators only happen after you land the client and the client says,
Mhm.
yes, we need a French translator, we need this language. Then you go and you find that maybe a list you used before of contacts. And I really like that idea. And it's got me thinking, since I've been trying to do like my personal
Mhm.
brand, I've been building out systems to automate things, one of which being uh, getting interviews booked automated to get people on this podcast, on the show, people that I find interesting, either related to business mindset or travel. And I'm starting to realize, like, whoa, I just solved this problem in my own business. I could now create all these different functionalities where somebody could pay me, to find guests for them. And then once they pay me, I could take that money and then use a backend system of either temporary virtual assistants, full-time virtual assistants, or like, in a way, it drops, instead of drop shipping a physical product, I could drop ship
Mhm.
labor in a way, right? So I think it's very interesting you've done this with a translation service. And I only just now really started to click for me, like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
that's ultimately what you're doing, and that's why you've been able to be in business
Mhm.
for so long, and then land high ticket clients. Uh,
Well, it was very easy to get started, and cash flow was not an issue. Very easy to have a nice lifestyle, and that was also because being German, that's a highly commercial language with a lot of demand. And with a computer science background, people saw that expertise and they hired me. When it comes to scaling large contracts, when we have a 6 or 7 figure prospect, we already need to start the recruitment. So we have the operations ready when they are starting. And then sometimes things didn't work out, and with corporate clients, this can be for many reasons. Often it's not related to our service. Maybe they just stay with their existing vendor, or they, yeah, like maybe like the department we talk to, they need translations and they haven't used it before. And then they will just go to ask a colleague for a recommendation, and they use an existing vendor after we talk to them for a long time. Something like that can happen, and you cannot take that personal. And then we have to stay focused. And when an obscure language is there, we have to evaluate the potential of the client, because we have to invest resources into recruitment. We have 2 vendor managers, people who just recruit translators and also some other roles. Um, we have to hire and vet these people before we need them. Um, you cannot just build capacity when you made the sales.
right. Yeah. I imagine. Yeah. Like you said, great to get started, great to cash flow, but you probably run into some issues with scaling. And especially when you have big ticket clients, I'm sure they don't want to wait
Mhm.
forever for you to, like, a month, go and hire someone, test them, vet them, and then they end up not doing that good of a job. So I helped kind of briefly, I had helped an aggregator who was looking to move a lot of their translations from the US to was it French market. And they had asked me just
Mhm.
for some advice here and there on, like, hey, how should we translate the listing? And do I know any translators that can help?
Mhm.
They immediately thought that I knew, just because I've been in Amazon for so long, but I've never translated a French listing in my
Mhm.
life.
Right, right.
I've never done that in my life. So I reached out to a few people that I knew,
Mhm.
and I found out really quickly, just because you know the language doesn't mean you know how to write in that
Right,
use case,
right.
right? Just
Mhm,
because someone is a native French speaker, they don't know how to write an Amazon bullet point and how it should be formatted and
mhm,
marketing aspects of it. So how do you go about creating a system or training to make sure that it's formatted correctly?
mhm. Yeah, Amazon translation is very specific, and what you say confirms if you as a business owner have the right relationships. Let's say someone who focuses on Amazon translations, they had a relationship with you, then you would have been happy to refer that client to them. And many kind of translations have specific issues. For Amazon product translations, you want strong copy. You just don't want to have a word per word translation, and it's not captivating. It's not persuading. So then you have the keywords. You want to make sure the listing
Mhm,
gets found.
mhm,
You cannot translate keywords literally, because people might search for something else in, let's say, France, and then you need to follow all the guidelines.
mhm,
How long can a title be? How often do you include the keywords? All that knowledge is really important. So there are companies which just specialize on Amazon translations.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think like most of us tend to think, oh, translating should be very easy because someone just speaks that
Mm,
language. But it's really hard to outsource and to do so at scale. So part of a better reason why going after a high ticket client makes sense, because at least I felt, and I know all the other people in the industry feel like, oh, it's just, it's Google Translate can do a good enough job, but the reality is it doesn't. I mean, they have to be trained on the specific use case, all the unique ways, like you mentioned, search volume, the ways people type in things into search bars are completely
mhm,
different. So, I mean, the difference between the success and failure is that copywriting type of expertise as well.
mhm.
Um,
Right.
I was curious, what other use cases? So you have like obviously direct translation, probably for e-commerce services. I never thought of
Mhm,
translating software. Could
mhm.
you maybe talk about other use cases that you provide for in your business, or maybe
We
some?
translate technical manuals, like instruction manuals,
Mm.
technical documentation.
No. Yeah, that makes sense because like you got I think at least in the US it's primarily English and Spanish, or if you're gonna do anything other than English on an instruction manual, you would probably translate to Spanish. But then
Mhm,
some of these other ones that people are used to seeing, you like fold out the instructions and that's like all five of them. So when you guys do that, are you just providing like the raw copy, or do you guys actually all have to like change the photos? Because when I did like that,
mhm,
uh, a little bit of advisement, people are like, "Oh, take this and translate it," but it's an image, and the text is like hard coded on the image
mhm.
in a different language. So how do you guys
Right.
do?
Yes. So usually it's not a good practice to hard code the text into the image, and that costs people a lot of time, and the translation takes much longer. And we take care of all the formatting.
Mhm. Yeah, and that makes me think, from a project management perspective, I learned this in university that 80% of projects are over budget and over time. So
Mhm,
sometimes when we think something's going to take, oh, it's just a translation or it's just this, we'll be
mhm.
surprised sometimes as entrepreneurs that things take longer than expected, just from getting things done, but also from a higher project management perspective and resource management.
Right. So if a client has a low maturity in the sense that they have very little translation experience, then they would often not be aware of the time and effort translations take, and they might make assumptions which then
Mm,
cause issues. So it's really important that they have a translation company which is proactive in which sets boundaries. So they rather say no than accepting a totally unrealistic turnaround time.
yeah, yeah, I would imagine for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and that makes me think too. So you have also been if you've been doing this for 10 years, I would imagine remotely, most of it. You've probably been a remote worker for a long time, huh?
Yes, so I started the company 10 years ago remotely from
Jeez.
scratch. And that's where we have a huge advantage. For us, it was not something new when COVID came, and we are very efficient with that. The way we hire people,
Yeah.
we ask them about their experience working from home and the challenges. And everyone needs to be a good match to be
Right.
part of the team. When we work in a global team, and it's so important. We have people from Brazil, from Indonesia, from Greece. They have the language knowledge, so we can internally check things, and they have different ways how they look at the problems.
Yeah, definitely. It's like COVID pops off, and when COVID first went, shut everything down, is when I was
Mm,
like, oh, I want to be an influencer. I want to like, I'm making good money on Amazon now. I want to do some other interesting
mhm,
projects. I was like, oh, I want to make my first YouTube video, and my first YouTube
mhm.
video was how to work from home, and I'd
Yeah.
given like some advice about like how I had on
Mhm,
my 9 to 5, the tips that I had kind of come across to make sure that I stayed in deep workflow, being able to
mhm.
disconnect work from home life, being able to work remotely and communicate with people remotely is different than in person. And it's interesting because it's like people are all about the, working from home lifestyle now. And it's like you've been doing this, if you've been doing this for 10 years, it's like when COVID happened, it must have been like, oh, it's just another, like you don't even skip a beat, I bet.
Yeah, just like a minor inconvenience being stuck at home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just really different. So have you traveled a lot? Have you been to a lot of places? I would
Yes,
imagine you're just location independent.
like a few weeks ago when Japan opened, I had the chance to go there, and yeah, it's great when you're flexible, and thankfully we didn't have like a huge project at the time where I would need to get involved, but still things to prepare. And I met up with a Japanese partner there for the first time, so
That's
it
cool.
was very interesting to hear about these cultural challenges companies
Mm,
face to expand. Yeah, so travel and business is very interrelated for
mm.
me.
Yeah, yeah, that's really awesome. I just started traveling when COVID kind of popped off, so I haven't been able to go to a lot of the countries that I've been wanting
Mhm,
to. And on the way to Belgium a few months ago, my partner and I stopped off in Japan at the airport.
mhm,
And I just remember thinking to myself, this was just a few months ago, and before Japan had opened up, and they had still the water. There was no water fountains because they were,
mhm,
Asian culture is very hygienic. Specifically,
mhm.
Japanese cultures, they're very
Yeah,
clean and very hygienic on that level.
yeah,
So when I was at the airport, I was like, it was so clean that I couldn't get any water, and I was like on a
yeah.
layover. I couldn't buy water. There was like one spot in like the whole airport at the time, and a robot kind of following me around trying to sell me
Mhm,
something, which was really cool as well. But yeah, I
mhm.
couldn't drink water, and I was like, man, I really want to check out Japan. I haven't been able to. And what's funny is my some of my family members are gonna. There's super cheap flights right now out of Hawaii for $500 round trip from Hawaii to
Wow.
Japan.
Mhm,
So hopefully I'll maybe get a chance to visit there soon. But another great reason why to be an entrepreneur and try and create an online income for yourself, because we were, like, you've been able to just immediately, as soon as a new country opens up post COVID or whenever you want, you just go and experience that culture. And I bet that's probably very, very cool to meet someone that you work with and see them
mhm.
in person and kind of connect with them on that level as well.
Yes, it's great to have these personal connections. Even I know foreign entrepreneurs who live and work in Japan. Even one German man from my university lives in Tokyo now. And there's always um, some pros and cons being an entrepreneur. You have flexibility, but at the same time, I'm more emotionally invested in the outcomes. I'm 100% responsible for the results, and um,
Mhm.
considering we work in so many languages for like high stakes clients, that can also be stressful. Or you have to find a way how I manage that responsibility, so it's not overburdening.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And knowing or working with all these different languages and different clients over the years, I bet you get the question is like, do you speak 5 languages or 10 languages, or do
Oh,
people
I
ask
just
you?
speak for, yeah.
Oh, just speak 4. That's that's 3 more than I speak.
Yes, because I I didn't start with English, so
Mm,
then English I had to learn, and my first foreign language was French, so then English had to be the second.
mm,
I I chose Latin, but I didn't count that. Like this was like optional, and then I learned Spanish in Mexico.
mm.
So now it's quite rusty, but yeah, I know a few languages, and it helps to to see the world in different ways. And language always shapes culture.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm starting to learn a little bit about that. I never planned to be in Mexico for so long.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm in Hawaii visiting family. But when COVID happened, I found myself in Playa del Carmen in Mexico City a lot.
Wow. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and originally I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna be here for 2 months," and then this is in 2020. "I'm just gonna be here for 2 months," and then,
Mhm.
you know, the rest of the world will open up and I'll go somewhere else, and then a year and a half later, I find myself continually going back there. One for time zone, working with clients, ease of flying back home, just everything. I
Right.
found myself really liking Mexico City a lot.
Mhm.
Um, but I never some of my friends were started to take Spanish classes, and I thought to myself, "Oh, I should probably start taking these classes now." But I found myself never dedicating enough time to doing it. And
Mhm.
then I found myself in Thailand and these other countries, uh, and Colombia, where they don't speak as much English in the places that I was
Right.
at,
Mhm.
like Mexico City and Playa del Carmen. So when I was in Colombia, I couldn't get by on even broken English. I really had to
Yeah.
force with Google Translate, and I learned
Right.
more words,
Uh,
meeting more people, and so it was really fun to kind of stretch myself in that way. I never
mm,
still I should take more of like a cultural immersion and start to learn the language. But what I've done since then, and one thing I have inside of the vault for any vault members listening or people who are interested in joining the vault, is I came up with what I think are the top words that I've used. Like, for
mhm.
example, like the number one word I use in another country, the first word I want to learn is actually not hello or goodbye or toilet. It's the word sorry. And because
Ah,
if
yeah.
I matter what I'm doing, it's like sorry, or like sorry means excuse me. Sorry means I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry
Mhm.
means, you know, sorry means please forgive me for being an idiot tourist. It
Mhm.
means all these different types of things. So I made like a list of 50 words. Um, and what I try and do is learn the first 5 before I get
Mhm.
somewhere. So what I do is on Google Translate, I'll take the first 5, I'll copy and paste it in Google Translate, and then I'll hit star, like I'll save it on my phone for
Mhm.
offline use. And I'll try and learn a few every day. So when I go to a new country, I can say things like, you know, sorry, I eat, I want eat this, or sorry, where toilet, sorry, tip, how
Yeah.
much, like all these like
Mhm.
things just to help you move throughout the city and make things a little bit easier. Not enough to obviously be immersed in the culture, but I've given that list to a few friends, and they've found a good amount of value there. So a little travel hack there as well. Um,
Mhm.
so to kind of wrap up the episode here, how can people find your service or get in contact with you if they're
Mhm.
interested in getting any kind of listing translation done?
Mhm.
Or whether it's do you really quickly too, do you also do like live translations
Or interpretation, we are
or
not
interpretation?
focused on that. It's like quite a different
I would
type
imagine.
of service. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So again, I mentioned our website, gateway translations.net.
Mhm.
And people can also look me up on LinkedIn and connect there. And ideally mention that you listen to the show, because otherwise I might not know who's that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And then so Marcus and I met through DC, Dynamite
Mhm.
Circle. mastermind. So another great reason to network with people. You meet interesting people all the time. And now I know next time someone hits me up for listing translation for Amazon, um, instead of just kind of tapping an internal network of people who have kind of done Amazon, now I'm able to connect with someone who I've interviewed before, who we
Mhm.
share whole circles with, mutual friends with. So another benefit of just networking and being an entrepreneur. So thank you so much,
Mhm.
Marcus, for your time. I'll definitely put the links below down in the description if anyone wants to check out Marcus, connect with him, and use his service in the future. So thanks a lot,
Yes.
Marcus.
Thanks for having me, Reggie.
Thank you. Take care.